So maybe 30, 35 years ago when I was a kid, my father mentioned to me after I had said that I love theme parks and that sort of thing. He said, "You know, there was a theme park in the mountains of North Carolina, which is where I'm from." He said there was a theme park in the mountains called the Land of Oz, and it was based on the Wizard of Oz, and it's gone now. And I was like, "What a great idea!" First of all, but there was a theme park in the mountain, and he's like, "Yeah, I guess it just couldn't hold on, and it's gone." So I carried this with me for years and years. It's like, what happened to this theme park? It sounds like a great idea, and it turns out that he was right about one thing, and that is that the theme park existed. But he was wrong about another thing, and that is that the theme park is gone, because it is not gone, and it is only not gone. It is not only still there, it is open now in a limited capacity. So the Land of Oz theme park, I just got back from it, by the way. The Land of Oz theme park was started in 1970 by a couple of guys, Jack Pence and George. His name eludes me for the moment. But anyway, Jack and George started a number of theme parks, three that I know of. One being Tweetsie Railroad, which is still operational. I went there as a kid and is still operational to this day, and probably will be for a long, long time. They started another park called Rebel Railroad, based on Tweetsie Railroad, but rather than being in the mountains like Tweetsie is, mountains of North Carolina like Tweetsie is, it's in the mountains of Tennessee. It's in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And if you've never heard of Rebel Railroad, that's not unusual, because Rebel Railroad was purchased by a Hollywood a megastar and turned into something called Dollywood. So Dollywood used to be Rebel Railroad and was started by the same two guys that started Tweetsie. Then they took a trip up to the mountains, Beech Mountain, that's Beech Mountain specifically, in the town of Banner Elk, North Carolina, and it's way up there. I mean, I'm from Wilmington, and Wilmington is at the beach, and so there's no mountains here. On the East Coast, you don't have mountains at the beach. You have flat land, and going up the side of this mountain was a complete world-changing thing for me. But the Land of Oz is up at the top of this mountain, and evidently they went up there and thought, wow, this is Oz. This feels like Oz. For whatever reason. And at that time, Western North Carolina eclipsed Eastern North Carolina in the economy for a number of reasons. In fact, Eastern North Carolina, east of Raleigh, with one major exception, is a fairly impoverished and undernourished area. It's very flat. There's some farming, but for the most part, it is not as economically viable as Charlotte, Raleigh, and all these little places in the mountains. One of the reasons for that is George Vanderbilt came to Asheville to build his super mansion, Biltmore House, which you can tour. And I think I've mentioned that in several other videos, so I won't go into depth about that. But anyway, he came down, visited with his mom, and agreed with what most people believe, and that is that the mountains are some of the most beautiful areas. Mountains of North Carolina are some of the most beautiful areas in the world. It's pretty amazing, and was pretty eye-opening to me to go up there. I'd been to the mountains before, but whenever I was younger, we went to Maggie Valley and Cherokee and places like that, Tweetsie, of course, but I couldn't fully take it all in. And now that I'm older, I was able to, and driving, I was able to really appreciate the mountains, and I kind of got the hang of the mountain roads after a little while. But if you were behind a Chrysler Pacifica going 15 miles an hour up the mountains, that was me, and I'm sorry if I held you up. But I just am not used to those roads. The constant 180-degree turns were not something that we experience here in Wilmington. So anyway, it also makes me kind of wonder about my love of manual transmissions. I wonder if I was up there if I would want a manual. I don't know. Anyway, the mountains are beautiful. George Vanderbilt came building this massive mansion and all the other things that he started, Asheville Woodworking Company, Forestry, School of Forestry, and this, that, and the other, made him the #1 employer in Western North Carolina for years because he brought so much money to the region. One person brought so much money to the region, and you know, it's kind of funny. People think that when rich people buy something that it's selfish and that sort of thing. But if you think about it, rich people spending their money is kind of what spins the wheel of the economy. Think of it this way. Let's say I buy something stupid like a Lamborghini. Well, there's a janitor at Lamborghini. There's the engineers at Lamborghini. There's the town that it's in that the factory pays taxes to. There is the company that makes tires for it, that makes wire for it, that makes buttons for it, you know what I mean? All these industries come together, and so whenever you buy something, you're putting your money out there, and this doesn't have to be a person who's rich. When you buy something at Walmart, that is going towards, you know, the shipping companies and the of course probably a lot of it goes to China, but you know, they need to eat too. But I'm not going to get into it. This actually could go into the realm of politics, and that is one thing that I try to stay away from. So what I'm talking about today is theme parks, and specifically one theme park, the Land of Oz. So the same two guys, Jack and George, got together and they thought, my gosh, this area is Oz. It's beautiful. And so they constructed, starting in 1968, construction began. The park was opened in 1970, the Land of Oz. Now, I say theme park, and you probably automatically start thinking about thrill rides and things like that. The Land of Oz only ever had one ride, and that was a balloon ride. The view had to be spectacular. It was a balloon ride that kind of went around the park and was really, the views had to be incredible, because the views that you get from the park, just as it is now, are stunning. And Judy Garland, who played Dorothy in the movie, of course, was supposed to come to the park and open it, you know, do the ribbon cutting and that sort of thing. But she died in 1969. She was only 47, I think. I'll have to double check that, but you know, she died in 1969, and so she was not able to come to the park opening. But Ray Bolger was, who played the Scarecrow. He came. A lot of famous people have come to the park over the years. Debbie Reynolds, Carrie Fisher, you know, people like that. I don't know if Liza Minnelli, who, by the way, is Judy Garland's daughter, and was great in Arrested Development, by the way, Liza, if you're watching this, you've made a huge fan out of me. But I don't know if she's been to the Land of Oz or not. If so, let me officially invite her to come. I would be glad to show you around. Even though I'm not an employee of the Land of Oz. They have plenty of employees. So I kind of thought whenever I got up there that I was going to see the remains of a park, and maybe there would be some people in costume and that sort of thing. But it has improved every year. Now, when I say it's open, that's not really true. I mean, Carowinds, you just show up on a Tuesday and you go, during the summer. Land of Oz, you have to get tickets for. They're very coveted, hard to get, and it's only open for 4 weekends, and that is every weekend in September. That's all it's open. So, and when I say weekend, it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, extended weekend, because they have to hire all these actors and people that there's still a ton of people there to run the park. Um, so, like I say, they're all temporary employees. The actors were fantastic, absolutely fantastic. They had looked, and whenever you get there, they have Kansas. You show up in Kansas, uh, and you have the farm, you have Dorothy's house, you have a gift shop, and a place to get something to eat. But they act out scenes from the 1939 film. It could be argued that the 1939 Wizard of Oz is maybe one of the top 10 films ever made. And I'm kind of a cinephile myself, uh, so I don't say that lightly. When it goes from black and white to Technicolor, it's spectacular. But the funniest part about Wizard of Oz is in 1939, it was kind of a flop. I think it was maybe just too much for people to take in. It was a fantasy thing. L. Frank Baum was a children's fantasy writer, and unlike Lewis Carroll or somebody like that who was on drugs, L. Frank Baum wasn't. But reading the books, you would think this guy is whacked out of his head. But what he was doing was writing fantasy for children. So he thought, well, something should be happening. There should be new characters. There should be all these unusual things happening. And I remember as a kid going to see Return to Oz. Now, I don't know if you've heard of that movie, but it was a movie that came out in the 80s. I can't remember what year exactly, 83, 84. Um, uh, that was the kind of new adventures of Oz. And my mom took me to see that movie. Rare that my mother and I ever went to a movie, but we did. We went to Star Wars, we went to that, we went to E.T., we went to a few, movies. It was big movies. You could get her out of the house to go to the movies. But we went to see that, and when we walked out, Mom was like, "That is the worst thing I have ever seen." But I had read most of the Oz books, by L. Frank Baum, and then another author took over. I can't remember her name right now. It's like three names, like Mary Jane Plimpton or something. Anyway, she wrote an Oz book a year in the style of Frank Baum. It's like whenever Ian Fleming died, and you had a few authors that were like authorized to write James Bond. So a few of the James Bonds that we love and know were not necessarily written by Ian Fleming. I'll have to research that, but I'm not sure if a non-Ian Fleming novel has been made into a movie yet. But I have a feeling that it's coming. But anyway, so Frank Baum wrote 13 Oz books, and I had read them, or read most of them. And I said, "Mom, that movie was what Oz really is." And she's like, "What?" I said, "All of that weirdness. The queen that took her head off, the mountain that talked, that was poisoned by an egg, the talking chicken, which is the way Dorothy went to Oz after that, Bellina, the talking chicken, not a tornado every time." So I was like, all of that is straight out of the books. That movie was fantastic, and it to me, because I the Wheelers, TikTok, all these crazy characters that you don't know of if you've just watched the classic 1939 film. That movie was crazy, but also it was the most normal Oz book. I mean, if you get deep into it, you get Cake the Cookie Shed, with the magic dishpan and all the. I mean, the spinning mountains where you have to go bang off the mountains to get to. I mean, it is wild if you ever get a chance to read the other Oz books. It's not Wizard of Oz, but this theme park is based solely on the first book, and of course the movie. And so anyway, there's actors that come and they kind of stay with you. There's a meet and greet. You have your picture. I've had my picture made with Scarecrow and Tin Man and Cowardly Lion, and they do. They'll act out their particular scene. And particularly, they also have rights to the songs. So you hear Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and if I only had a brain, and if I only had a heart, the knife. You get the idea. You've seen the movie. Sorry, I don't mean to sing the entire soundtrack to you, but it's catchy. Then finally, so you go through Dorothy's house. The tornado happens while you're in there. There's a room that's painted, up, and then you walk into the house, and it's an old funhouse technique where the floor is tilted. So you're walking like this, and it really messes with your equilibrium. That's the house after it has landed in Oz, and you're met by the Wicked Witch of the West, who also has a castle-like stage there in the land of Oz for you to see. And then you're in Oz. And I remember looking down and setting foot on the yellow brick road for the first time. And that yellow brick road goes all the way around the mountain, and it's beautiful. There's not only what they've cultivated. You see Munchkin Land, the guy with the death certificate, and they talk to you. It's an improv kind of thing. I'm an actor myself, and it's kind of an improv thing. So they talk to you, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Anyway, I can't say enough about the Wizard of Oz, but I do want to say a couple things about the Wizard of Oz the movie, and these are things that stick in my craw a little bit. And it occurred to me whenever they were acting out the last scene. You get to the Emerald City, which, by the way, is part of the reason that Oz closed down. They think it was arson, but the Emerald City burned down. And some things were stolen, like an original dress that Judy Garland wore, a Dorothy dress, and some things that have never been recovered. So whoever did that, grow a conscience and give it back. Anyway, so now it's a tent, but it's like a really nice tent. I mean, it's hard to explain, but it has hard walls and, projectors and steel framing and this, that, and the other, and they act out the last scene of the movie. And there's a couple things in there that stuck with me that I'm like, this became a movie trope, and it shouldn't have. It's been done to death. Number one, the wizard's advice is kind of terrible. Like, he says to the Tin Man, because it matters, or what matters is not how much you love, but how much you're loved by others. And you start thinking about, like, wait a minute, that's terrible advice. That means people are just going to go out and seek validation from other people, and if they don't get it, which you won't, from everybody, it's going to crush them. That's terrible advice. And the other thing was, Dorothy says, well, if it's not in my own backyard, then I should never go out and see it anyway. I'm never going to leave my house again. That's terrible. You do need to leave your house. Go out and have an adventure. If I hadn't have left my house, I wouldn't have gone to the land of Oz and had a great time. So anyway, that's the point. But that's a movie trope that has been repeated so many times. Dorothy had met three people, or three characters who would literally die for her, and they proved it, that they would die for her. And she's like, well, no, I got to get back home. Sorry, see you guys. It's I just thought, my gosh, it's one of those things, like, if they love you in Romania but they hate you in New Jersey, stay in Romania. You don't have to go back home. Go where people like you. So that's been repeated in movies over and over, and it drives me crazy. Sorry, got a little bit of a sore throat. By the way, I'm John the Storyteller, and you are in the Shed of Knowledge, and this is called Something Interesting. So usually I have a little fact from history or something like that, but today I just wanted to tell you about my trip and what a great time I had in this defunct amusement park that they are pouring their efforts back into. It was marred a little bit by rain. You're in the mountains, and it is fall up there. It's still hot in Wilmington, but it's still fall up there. Oh, by the way, I mentioned that Eastern North Carolina had not had the economic benefits that Western North Carolina had. And sometimes you think of the mountains as being a place where, okay, well, that's kind of a place where people go that don't have a lot of money and this, that, and the other. But Western North Carolina had the benefit of George Vanderbilt. It also had the benefit of a lot of grant money, block grants and things like that coming into Western North Carolina that helped kickstart the economy that Eastern North Carolina didn't have. Now, I mentioned there was one exception to Eastern North Carolina, and that's Wilmington, where I live. Wilmington was the largest city in North Carolina throughout the entire 1800s, and then it kind of stopped. It started going up the river a bit, Fayetteville, Jacksonville, that sort of thing, and made its way on into Raleigh, and then of course Charlotte is the largest city in North Carolina. If you look at the map of North Carolina, there was a rail line that kind of went like this, and you start realizing, oh, Raleigh, High Point, Burlington, Winston-Salem, all these towns were on the rail line, and they all grew. So once rail travel, that's late 1800s, got more popular. I mean, obviously, rail travel existed in the 1850s, but really good rail travel, was late 1800s. I could get into rail travel too. I think I did one. Go look on my thing about Cornelius Vanderbilt and cars telescoping and that sort of thing, and I'll talk a little bit about the evolution of rail travel and how it got better. So just look that one up. It should be on my page somewhere. I'm not really sure how to like link things or change things, but I like to do this all in one take because I want us to feel like we're together here in the Shed of Knowledge and we're just having a conversation, So that's why, like you see a lot of other people on YouTube, they have clips and this, that, and the other because they want to get the best parts. But I try to make it all the best parts so that it feels a little bit more natural. Anyway, so like I said, the exception to that was Wilmington, the port city in North Carolina, starting in the 1700s. We were actually called New Liverpool, which is kind of cool. We get the little Beatles thing going on. This was New Liverpool here, and then it was renamed in 1737. God. I should know this. Anyway, it was named for the Earl of Wilmington, which was a British. So I guess it had to be before 1776. We do have a house here from 1737, and a couple more that are pre-Revolutionary War. And then we have a lot of antebellum houses here that are beautiful, and then a lot of Victorian and Edwardian era homes that are beautiful. I think we have 9 historic districts in Wilmington. It was kind of great because Wilmington was exploding in the 1800s, and then it just kind of stopped and stayed static, population-wise for a while. Now, population of Wilmington is like 110,000. Doesn't sound like very much, but we're surrounded by New Hanover County, And we are New Hanover County is the smallest county in North Carolina, but it's almost all metropolitan. So it's a city county type of thing going. The next largest city in North Carolina is Greenville, which is a much smaller city and isn't surrounded by metropolitan areas. So that's why Wilmington uh, has so much here. The other thing is, like, our population grows in the summer because it's a big tourist. I mean, we're at the beach. We got the historic downtown. We got the battleship. We got this, that, and the other. So, great town. But anyway, that was the exception to what I was saying about the eastern area kind of not catching up or the western area growing economically faster than the eastern area. Um, the exception being, of course, Wilmington. Anyway, I get off on these tangents. I call them tendrils because everything kind of fits together. It's funny the way that things affect each other. By the way, just one little aside. I'm almost done here. When the Land of Oz opened in 1970, just the first year it attracted 400,000 people, and this is a theme park without any rides. It was the number one attraction in North Carolina, the Land of Oz, in 1970. Disney even sent people there to figure out why a theme park with one ride has such, viewership. And basically, you can see that influence in Disney World today. There's a lot of rides or shows that are just kind of looky. You know what I mean? You just look. It's not a thrill ride. You're not rolling out. Take It's a Small World, for example. You just go on a boat and look around you, and that's the ride. So anyway, there's another tendril. That one went to Florida. So speaking of going to Florida, I'll be going there soon to take in the theme parks down there again. I was just in Orlando seemed like it was just a couple, 3 months ago, and we got a nice Airbnb down there. That's the way to do it. We got a log cabin this time around, and I would call it a log mansion because I don't know of many log cabins that have 6 bedrooms and a game room and all this other stuff, but this is not ski season. So everything up there is a bit cheaper, and I think that's why Oz is open in the off season of the ski season. They even used some of Ski Beach. Their beautiful, huge buildings that are usually full were empty. So they used a lot of them for check-in and that sort of thing to see Oz. Anyway, that's my little review of the Land of Oz. So if that doesn't convince you to go, I don't know what to tell you. It was a great time, and so you should go, and maybe I'll see you there.